Have you ever had these impulsive moments when you said things that immediately came to your mind without necessarily considering the timing or appropriateness of your words, just because you were in a stressful situation? On a normal daily basis, you would just wave it off, maybe ignore it, and think of the situation as a trivial matter, or possibly call it a brain fart. However, when you are being interrogated by the police, every action that you take and every word that you utter contributes to a serious matter and becomes closely monitored. For instance, imagine this scenario. Imagine that you were a 14-year-old and your 12-year-old sister was murdered. Next thing you know, government agents and police officer officials show up at your doorstep, stating your Miranda rights and claiming that they have evidence of your guilt in the murder of your sister. What goes through your mind when you haven't done anything wrong? Do you talk? Many of you might think, yeah, why not, right? I'm innocent. But let's add to the scenario. What do you say during your multiple interrogations while receiving threats of violence, threats of food deprivation, and lies about your lie detector results? What do you say when you're forced to write a letter to your dead sister, apologizing for killing her? What do you say when everyone thinks you're guilty? Is it possible that you might begin to feel uncertain, possibly even question your innocence, and end up making a false confession to a crime you did not commit? Well, on January 21st, 1998, this is precisely what happened to Michael Crow and two of his friends after his little sister, Stephanie Crow, was found dead with 9 stab wounds on her bedroom floor in their Escondido home in California. After Michael and his friends waived their Miranda rights, the Escondido police immediately began interrogating them for hours, over 2 days, until they falsely confessed and were charged for murder. Fortunately, after several days of hearing on the high-profile case in which all available evidence was reviewed, including dozens of hours of videotape recording that showed the coercive and harsh methods utilized by the police, Superior Court Judge Kenneth So concluded that the 3 teens were without a doubt factually innocent. Although the murder case occurred decades ago, their confessions under police interrogations are classic examples of false confessions, disclose a gaping hole in the criminal justice system, and reveal how electronic recordings of interrogations from the beginning to the end will always remain the single best reform to prevent wrongful convictions caused by false confessions. This video that I found on Oprah.com shows the first day that Michael Crow was interrogated, and the few interrogation methods that they used on him, and the false confession that he made at the end. On the first day he was interrogated, the police officers repeatedly asked him if he killed his sister, and his response was always the same. But after the Escondido police repeatedly utilized harsh and mentally exhausting techniques on Michael, they finally desired the confession they aspired. Did you know that over 25% of the 330 DNA-based exonerations in this country involve false confessions, and that in most cases, those false confessions were made by the youth? In 2013, the National Registry of Exonerations reported that in the past 25 years, 38% of those exonerations of crimes were supposedly committed by the youth involve false confessions. But even with these statistics, it is still virtually impossible to comprehend what tactics have the capacity to mentally distort an individual's mind and make that person make a false confession to a crime he or she did not commit. In other words, what could have caused Michael, an adolescent who knew he was innocent, make a false confession stating that he was responsible for killing his sister? After fervently studying this phenomenon, an abundance of researchers, including Saul Casson and Gil Goodman, um, found that, in fact, there are several factors, including coercion, intoxication, ignorance of the law, fear of violence, and a misunderstanding of that situation that contributes to or causes false confession. And to further explain why the youth is more susceptible to false confessions, to make false confessions, Loki Bowman from Northeastern University Law stated that the interrogation process is already inherently coercive, and it's psychologically difficult for even strong and intelligent people to withstand. Therefore, when we impose these techniques on an individual who is young and intellectually vulnerable, the capacity for that person to withstand this process is easily overcome. This is why it is extremely essential for every state in the U.S. to enforce electronic recordings of interrogations, because this is simply the only way you can create an unbiased record of what occurs during a interrogation process, which is when law enforcement questions are most likely to give incriminating responses from suspects. And in cases where law enforcement fail to do this, there should be a mandatory set of instructions given to the juror, directing them to disregard the confession if they believe it was coerced. Also, it is essential to note that when you are recording the interrogation process, to focus the camera on both the interrogator and the suspect, because if this is not done properly, this could cause the juror to believe that the confession was given freely. Ideally, the judge should suppress any confessions that were not recorded properly or were not recorded at all to ensure that they are not to be heard by any jurors. Although a 2015 article published in the Harvard Law Review has consistently stated why the U.S. Department of Justice has repeatedly resisted and opposed the implementation of electronic recordings during the interrogation process, there has been abundance of proven success in more than 20 states, from North Carolina to Massachusetts to California, that highlights the benefits of implementing this policy. And while it's understandable that the U.S. Department of Justice fears that adopting this policy will cause judges to misinterpret acceptable interrogation methods as improper and is systematically difficult to implement, a study conducted by the Center of Wrongful Conviction found that in more than 200 locations that implement this policy, there was an overwhelming embrace by police officers who believe that this measure was a good law enforcement practice. This illustrates how significant it is for proactive policies like these to be converted to legislative policies, because even the article published by the Innocence Project stated that not only does this policy protect an abundance of innocent individuals, it also helps law enforcement officials defend themselves against any false allegations. Giselle Johnson accurately stated that there's a lot at stake when a wrong person is convicted. So you cannot take a confession at face value. You must corroborate it, because one mistake costs people their lives. And you can help bring awareness to this policy by contacting or emailing or writing a letter to federal members of your Congress or the 2 senators of your state. And if you want their number, here it is. So, and you can also go on senate.gov to get this information as well. Some of you might be currently thinking, why should I care? This policy has already been implemented in California, therefore it does not affect me. But yes, you are right, it may not affect you right now, but imagine yourself in Michael Crow's shoes. Imagine yourself constantly being questioned. Imagine yourself in a position where your innocence was constantly questioned by his authorities. Imagine yourself in a dark jail cell where you didn't know why, you knew you didn't belong because there was nothing you did wrong. And unlike Michael Crow, there are still an abundance of individuals who did not have their interrogation recorded, and to this day are still waiting for someone to disclose their innocence, and so they can finally obtain their freedom that was wrongfully taken away from them by false confessions.